Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Bill Roach. This is another episode of Timeless Dialogues. And today, I think we're going to discuss one of the most important topics on the internet. Namely, we're going to talk about things that relate to the internet. So have you ever noticed that there are a variety of issues and topics that people like to talk around, but they never like to actually talk about? Well, today what we're going to do is we're going to discuss the effects of social media in our lives. And in fact, we're going to just raise this question. Are you addicted to social media? Nobody ever likes to talk about that. We all find ourselves, sitting somewhere and we got to scroll through our phone. We are looking at YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, all the different social media outlets that are out there. And we realize that in some sense, we need them and they know that we need them. And we're constantly being fed information from friends and marketing devices and big tech companies and small tech companies and all the rest. And I've come to the realization in my own life and by looking at the lives of several other people that I'm addicted to social media. Sometimes it's the first thing that I look at in the morning, the last thing I look at night. It's something that I feel like I have to look at when I know it's wrong to at like a stoplight. I got to look at what so-and-so said. Or you put something on Twitter and how many retweets or likes did you get? And the reason that this is important is that it's something that can and in many respects does control us. So what I want to do today is I want to deal with this issue of social media addiction. And I'm not here to just point fingers at people. I'm here to help us evaluate what does this actually look like and hopefully overcome it. This is something that I'm doing for myself as a means of accountability because I know that it's something that I've struggled with. But when you talk to various other people, you know it's something that they struggle with. For example, people have asked me, like, what does it feel like to live in a life where you have social media constantly? And I tell them in many respects, it feels like a strobe light that seemingly never ends. And I just want to illustrate this real quick. I'm going to pull up this screen here, and I want us to try and pay attention to anything that I'm saying as this is going on. So if you look at what you see here, you just see this light going off. And it doesn't really matter what I'm saying because that light is overly distracting. And, if you ever go to like a junior high dance or a high school dance or something, or wherever you go that may have a strobe light, it almost takes time to come off of it. It's like it's too much sensory data that's hitting you at every moment. And what I want you to see is that in many respects, this is exactly what our lives feel like at any given moment. So I will stop the chaos of the social media import from us. And I want us to consider how many areas it does affect. And, I've spoken with doctors and people from being in ministry. And what we find is that this is something that has affected so many different people. I mean, think about it like this. How many people you hear a story that goes like this? I gave my 10-year-old a phone and my 10-year-old has now turned into a teenager and I can't get him or her off of their phone. Or you're trying to have a conversation with somebody and it's like, yeah, okay, yep. And you know that they're not paying attention to you and it's totally rude and you can tell that they're completely, utterly addicted to it. Or you go to a restaurant and what are people doing? They're playing on their phone the whole time. Or something like this. You hear stories of parents who try to take away a phone from a kid and they absolutely lose it. Why is that? Well, it's because we're all addicted to social media. I mean, we can even talk about humorous ways that people are addicted to social media. For example, I knew this guy who, long story short, he was suffering from a little bit of hernias and different things along those lines. And a medical doctor was telling him, here are different ways that you can, deal with this. Actually, it wasn't hernias, it was hemorrhoids. And he was struggling with it and he was giving him advice and he was saying, you need to go get this medicine. You need to relax. But he jokingly said, and I know this is bathroom humor, but it is what it is. He said, when you go to the bathroom, get in and get out. And I was like, well, what do you mean? And he was like, well, I don't know how to put it any other way. People play on their phones all the time, and it's giving them hemorrhoids. So seriously, why is that? We're totally addicted to them. Now, we understand like the nature of addictions today and the real effects of them. Now, just by way of my background, I've never personally been an addict to like a hard drug, but I grew up in a family where that was a reality. My mom was a very bad alcoholic. I saw the effects of it. And I know there may be a difference between Facebook and alcoholism, but I know what it's like to watch somebody become grasped by something. It literally is almost like a chain on them. And I would liken to the fact that I think social media can be that way. And we're going to look at that here in a minute. But we know what it is. There are these sort of like dopamine hits that people get from different drugs that makes them feel better, or they feel more calm, or a variety of things that happen with it. And as they feel better, they want more of it. And the reality is that we log on to social media because it's meeting a need in our lives. And it could be a good need or a bad need, but it's meeting the need in some way, shape, or form. And what we find is that we need more and more of it in order to like meet that dopamine level or to even have a dopamine level. So what I'm trying to say is this, and this is how we're going to look at it. As a person who is a philosopher by training, a theologian and minister by calling, this is something that I feel like I need to speak into. It's almost an aspect of discipleship because people don't read their Bibles as much, or they don't pay attention in church from it. They're suffering in their day-to-day lives. And this is something that affects both the people out there and the person right here. So this is a way of working through it. So I can expect a few things that people might say in regard to this. And I kind of want to just hit them off from the very beginning. Some people might be saying, well, you're just being very, very legalistic about this. Don't you realize that I have freedom to look at this? People within the church might say, I have freedom in Christ to be on social media. Or people might say, legally, I have the freedom to look at social media. And that's not what I'm trying to say. I'm not trying to say you should not be on social media, because legalism is going to say, take it all, throw it away, never deal with it. And we realize that some people just can't do that. Like there are job requirements or different things that require them to be on social media. Now, the other side of it would say something like, well, as I'm looking at this, who really cares? Like, I'm not hurting anybody else. It's just me. It's just something that I'm struggling with or something that I'm dealing with. Like, it doesn't bother you. So who really cares? And I hear all the different sides of it, from, the legalist to the antinomian to the guy, let me live and let live and do whatever I want. But I want to really ask this question. Is your level of social media input helping you live a life that's most fulfilling? Now, it's not like are you living your best life now? I'm really trying to ask something like this. What is the chief end of man? The chief end of man is to glorify God and to enjoy Him forever. And you might be saying, well, I enjoy God by listening to sermons. Great. I enjoy God by listening to podcasts. Awesome. I hope you may enjoy God better by listening to this podcast. But what I want us to realize is that we were created for more than sitting on Facebook scrolling at the food that people ate and the trips that they go on, or whatever it may be, the latest advice on TikTok, Twitter, or some stupid prank that somebody's putting out there. So here are a couple of things that I want us to think through. Is social media and the internet, and that could be your video games, just scrolling online, texting, any of those things, are they in and of themselves wrong? And the answer to that would, in the first sense, have to be no, or no, but it depends on what you're looking at. So let's break this down. Obviously, if you are going on the internet and you're looking at porn or something where you're seeing people being hurt in various ways on the internet, nobody's going to deny you shouldn't be looking at that. Like there's just certain things you realize, no, that's just off limits. There's no way of redeeming those types of things. But the question I'm asking is being on the internet in and of itself a bad thing? And I would say no. God has obviously used the internet, the information age, social media as a good thing to communicate good things to people. Obviously, we realize the value of it. That's why every Tom, Dick, and Harry has a podcast just like this, where ironically over-influenced and over sense data input by podcasts all the time. Everybody asks me, oh, have you listened to this? I'm like, no, I don't have the time to listen to all of those. That's why it's a market that's out there. But what I want you to see is that in and of itself, there's nothing wrong with it. And I would say something like this is that, so if there's nothing wrong with it, then we can use it. But we realize that a good thing can become a bad thing if it's done too much. Now, another thing is this: are there jobs and sort of realities of life that require us to be on social media? Yes. I mean, I've got friends who run whole businesses surrounded around social media. Like I know this guy who gets hundreds of messages a day because he sells a product on the internet and people are constantly messaging him, asking him questions. And he's had to navigate ways of, man, how do I not fall prey to being addicted or just constantly at the control and the command of my phone? And we realized if you have a job and you're over the marketing of something and it requires you to be on social media, you're going to have to deal with it, maybe all day. So we realize that there are certain jobs and professions and times that require us to be on social media. So again, it's not legalism or antinomianism. We realize certain things in life just require it. But the issue we need to consider is whether or not social media is bringing out the best in us. And I'm talking about when you have the choice to use social media and you know that you probably shouldn't be doing it that much. But we can even broaden it. Is social media bringing out the best in us, in our families, in our jobs, in our social networks that we have, our friends, our community? And I think it's interesting. Like when we see all these TikTok challenges and people getting gravely hurt, no, social media is not helping that. But I'm not talking about just people getting hurt. Are you absolutely controlled by this? Are you going to live your life and realize, man, I didn't write the book that I needed to write, or I didn't have the good conversation that I needed to, or go on the hike that I needed to, or whatever is your hobby that you needed to do, or you're going to get to the end of your life and realize, I didn't talk to family members enough and now they're gone. Or I've lived in this awesome city, but I know nothing about it because I'm just scrolling through Facebook endlessly. I think we know the answers to a lot of these, and studies have shown that by and far, we are failing in pretty much each and every one of these different areas. We are failing in our families because we're not spending meaningful, adequate time with them. We are failing ourselves. We're not really following the chief end of man of glorifying God and enjoying him forever, or seeking that which is the true sort of intellectual life that we may be called to, or pursuing our professions to the greatest degree that we can, or we just get lazy from it. Again, we can label any other way that we want to talk about this. And I don't want to lose you at this point. I just want us to realize we've got a problem. So in order to discuss this, I want to bring up a few things that I have found, just articles on the internet, that will help us see exactly what I'm trying to get at here. So let me pull these up. I'm just going to make them a little bit bigger. Different articles require me to do different things here. And this article here is talking about 6 ways to beat social media addiction. And we see this guy just sitting there. I mean, he's like on the phone talking and he's texting or looking at Facebook. And this is it's time to log off.com. And it looks like it was published in November 25th, 2020. So it's a little old, but it's really not. And notice what it says here. It is estimated that 210 million people worldwide suffer from internet and social media addiction. This was only a 2017 estimate before our world seemed to move online. So if that's what it was before 2020, and then all of us just did nothing but live our lives on the internet from COVID and on, I bet it's significantly more now. And it goes on to say, with so many of us trapped inside, unable to see friends in person, and consequently resorting to social media out of boredom and a desire to connect, our usage patterns have indisputably gotten even unhealthier. So it goes on to say this: social media addiction is no easy thing to quantify. And I agree with that. It's very hard to be like, oh, are you not? But there are some very clear signs checking off how many of these social media addictions you are guilty of. And it says how many were applicable to you. If you recognize yourself in any of these signs, and what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to click on it. So if there's something goofy, forgive me. Pulling it up here. So here are a couple of the things, signs of them. The first thing you do in the morning is check social media. You check social media during the workday. You are anxious when you cannot check your social media. You are constantly checking how your posts perform. You spend a lot of time overthinking and planning your posts. Yeah, we do that. Oh, is it perfect? Is it going to catch everybody? You think you hear your phone buzz when really it didn't. I do that all the time. In addition to it, you neglect your own hobbies in favor of scrolling. So what can I do? And it calls for us to have a digital detox. But it goes on to say, how many of those? And this is something that I have to ask myself. How many of these am I actually falling prey to? And it says, so what can we do? Beating social media and all the rest. But I want to deal with a little bit more here. So the Mayo Clinic talks about addiction, and it talks about addiction as it relates to gambling or exercise or watching online videos and all these different things. And it talks about, the differences between behavioral and substance addiction. And substance, we realize, like alcohol or tobacco or drugs. And those are real addictions that people get caught on. But behavioral addictions are something that seem to grasp more of us today, like gambling. We realize if a guy goes out and blows all of his money because you can't leave the casino, you got a problem, man. Or a workaholic, the lady that never gets out of her job, or the man that never gets out of her job. They're taking it home with them 24/7. They're workaholics. It's where they find their significance. Or exercise, and you're constantly having to exercise, or food, or video games, sex/pornography, shopping. These are behaviors. But notice what it says: the internet, scrolling the internet. And we know what that is. It's all the different social media, the websites, the buying, whatever it may be, is a behavioral addiction that has grasped us. And if you go down, it looks at different things for substance and alcohol, but it says teen screen addiction. Now, I don't think it's just teen screen. I think it's everybody's got this addiction. If they know how to use a phone, it captures them. So I click on this here, and it goes on to talk about things like screen damage and our video games and different things like that harming us in different ways. And let me just broaden this just a little bit so you can see a little bit more of it. Sorry if the other one didn't show up perfectly. But it goes on to say this: in an increasing digitized world where most people, even children, own electronic devices with screens, many parents worry about the effects of screen use on themselves and their children. And we see this, the kid won't shut up as you're riding down the road, give him your phone. The kid won't shut up when he's at the restaurant, give him your phone or tablet or this or that or video games. I mean, I've had friends like literally flunk college because they can't get off of video games or the internet. And it's interesting because my wife and I were talking about this. We were almost like the last generation to grow up without the internet as kids, it seemed like. I got the internet my senior year of high school at home. I graduated 20 years ago, basically to the week. And it was during my senior year that we actually got dial-up internet. That squawky sound that captures everything. And it's annoying to listen to. And it took forever to download anything. Like, that's the first one. When I graduated from high school, I got my first cell phone. But I went through most of my PhD work, literally bachelor's, master's, another master's, PhD, and didn't have like a smartphone. And yeah, we had the internet, but it wasn't as prevalent as it was. And they go on to look at this, like, is it damaging? So it actually gives ways that like screen time can be physically and behaviorally damaging to you. Some people know that they've been on the screen too much because they suffer from obesity. They never exercise. They literally are just like zoned out on their phone constantly, or poor sleep or insomnia. Think about the strobe light constantly. Information. This is annoying to you, isn't it? But you allow social media to do it to you constantly. Why can't I? Because you don't let me do it, but you'll let your social media do it. And we realize, like, if you scroll endlessly before you try to go to bed, you can't fall asleep. Like, it's literally, the phones have these different settings on them because we realize, like, they're constantly affecting us in that regard. Or you get so anxious and worried about what somebody said or might say. So screen time, behavioral problems, like impulsive actions. Man, I bought that thing on Amazon, or you had to look at that like, oh, isn't that tempting? Or loss of social skills. Seriously, have you ever met these kids that have like never been on a baseball team or never sort of just like joked around with one another? You want to poke them with a stick. You're like, are you even alive, man? Like, what's wrong with you? But they have no social skills. And it's like, these people grow up and get jobs and they don't even know how to answer the phone and be like, or they don't know how to say, like, would you like fries with that? And that's not a good life skill. We realize that. Or we find like there's violence that can come from it, or less time for kids to play, eye strain. Like, we need glasses more sometimes because we stare at a screen all day long. Or another thing that doesn't talk about, have you ever got like carpal tunnel in your wrists or your hands from it? I have. I've realized the more I do this right here, it hurts. I guarantee you there's going to be some carpal tunnel doctor guy out there that's going to make billions of dollars, some company, by just solving the tendonitis issues and all these different things that we have in our hands, or neck and back problems. Seriously, this that we do, we find this is something that we struggle with. You ever thought about that? Our back, different things right here. I had a neck injury from doing jujitsu, and I had to get off of my phone or hold it out here like this for the longest time because I couldn't turn. I had a neck problem. Or people get anxiety, depression, difficulties with work or school. They don't do their job, or they just can't help but look. And it goes on to show all these different things. And how can gaming be an addiction, and symptoms of it? For example, here's some symptoms. Having intense urges for screen time or to play video games, and these urges block out other thoughts. Spending money on video games or screens, even though you can't afford it. Cutting back on social or recreational activities because of preference for screen time or video games. You won't hang out with your buddies because you'd rather text them at home or whatever. Goes on to say things like poor performance. We know that. Displays of signs of irritability, anxiety, anger when forced to stop playing, even for brief periods of time. They take the phone away and they lose their minds. Seriously. It's like the Joker off of Batman Returns. He's just all crazy about it, but that's what people are. Lying to others. No, I wasn't on there for that long. Needing more screen time to get the same level of enjoyment. First 5 minutes of Twitter was awesome when you first got it. Now it requires like 3 hours. Neglecting your appearance, including lack of interest in grooming or clothing. You're filthy, you're dirty, you stink. People don't want it. And we realize all these different things. It gives different things to follow and different things. And we'll look at this. Some of this is just vague stuff. But what I want us to realize is that people are desperately struggling from these kinds of things. And what I want to do is kind of look at some of the significant issues. I want to ask some bigger questions. And here are some of them. And this is things like, as somebody who's been in ministry and counseled people, or somebody who's a philosopher, theologian, and somebody who's lived in a home with an addict. It's things like this. Does our social media addiction reveal something else? Maybe something more significant is wrong with us. And we're going to look at some of this. Or are we using social media to meet our needs that should be met in other areas or in better ways? And we got to see this. Social media addictions, like all addictions, are typically the result of some other need not being met. And I'll say that again, it's due to some other need that's not being met. For example, Some people long for connection. So social media provides that for you. It's a superficial connection. Like how many people can get, 500 likes the day that a family member dies, but yet 15 people show up to the funeral? Are they really friends? Is that really connection? Or you can post something on Facebook about, hey, I'm struggling with this. And all these people will like and comment and do that, but none of them will come to your house. You're longing for connection, but social media is giving you just almost this simulacrity. It's not a real connection. It's the mere appearance of a connection. It's not the real thing. It's a false, cheap substitute. Or some people desire to constantly know what's going on. Like they constantly have to know what's so-and-so doing. Did they go on vacation? Did they get the promotion? Did they whatever? So social media gives them the appearance of constantly knowing what's going on. And it's funny, social media will tell you, oh, so-and-so went to the beach and so-and-so went to the mountains, or they went on this trip, or they went to that restaurant, or whatever they may be doing. But as we all know, you only put your best pictures up there. You only put the times where you really have fun. You don't talk about the real stuff that happens in your life. You don't talk about the real struggles and consequences of social media addiction or real addictions or marital problems or all the things that people typically have a, hey, can we talk moment? All those kinds of things. Yeah, you don't put that on social media. Why? Because it doesn't make you look great. Your appearance isn't the way that it should be. Or some people, they seek affirmation. And we realize this is like, people are like, oh, this is all a bunch of pop psychology. Well, yes, but no, like these are real things that we want in life. These are real desires that we want in life. So all the likes and the retweets give the appearance of affirmation, or some people want influence over other people. So if they get 50, likes and 25 retweets, you're amazing. Or I've got 21,000 Twitter followers. I must be making a difference in this world. It's like, no, you're not. You're just spending all of your time on social media. It's like if the good life is knowing God and knowing the true, the good, and the beautiful, namely God and his attributes and living in God's creation in a fruitful way, and all you're doing is just having Twitter wars with every little thing out there, but I've got 100,000 followers. Really? It's one of those things where I'm like, Socrates would sort of inquire about your good life, and he would find your good life very wanting. It's lacking. We realize this. There's something that the ancients and the medievals and people who lived before social media found in what the good life actually is that seems to not always reconcile with what social media is giving us. And that's a topic we could give, like, what is the philosophical good life? But it's not just philosophy, because people think, oh, philosophy, it's esoteric and we got to live the stoic life or whatever it may be. God calls us to more than just social media. Like, I know this guy who is brash all over the internet, and I was in a different kind of messaging app, and he got in this war with some social media guy, another guy on Twitter, and they're going back and forth. He's like, hey, look, I'm getting all of these followers on social media. And I was like, yep, you've received your reward in full. Like, you got the affirmation that you were looking for. What about don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, or don't do your works before men in order to be praised by men? And that's how so much of social media is that we have these needs that we want met. And this is exactly how other addictions operate. Like, I have the need for peace or a sense of calmness, and alcohol provides that for me. Or I have the need for sex and relationships and connectivity, and I'm not getting it home, so they go have the affair with whomever is there and around and giving it to them. Or I need affirmation, and I'm just going to get it through my job, or all these things. And I'm not saying your job is bad or any like that. Like, obviously there's certain things immoral in and of themselves, but there are needs that are not being met. And if we realize other addictions are false substitutes, why can't the internet be like that? And social media addictions, like all other addictions, are typically a way to escape certain elements of life. Like, for example, we can't stand the fact that we have no friends. There's nobody in our day-to-day life. Like, you walk in the coffee shop, nobody knows you. You walk to the gym, nobody knows you. Like, you don't have a friend to call during a tough time. So we cover it all up through the appearance of friends online. Look, here are my friends, God. Look at my friends. And we see that this metaverse has totally disconnected us from the real world. God calls us to much more. The call to discipleship in our day and age may require you to put your phone down. Or as John Piper would say, like, at the end of the day, Facebook is going to exist to prove like we did have all the time to get to know God better and read his word and disciple our families and evangelize the lost and serve our churches and pour in, even if it's not just for that, good activities that we might want to find ourselves doing. Or the cheap substitute, like, hey, I'm going to build a garden on my social media game. All the while, you don't even know how to plant a real garden in your own backyard. Like, things that you learn in life that only real experiences are going to give you. Like, we play video games and it's like, oh, look, I jumped my bike over this. Hey, guess what, kids? Guess what? I used to actually jump my bike from a ramp over like a ditch, except the one time when I didn't. And I went diving into it and I jacked my shoulder up and I looked like an idiot. But you know what? That's life. The metaverse kicks back or doesn't kick back. Real life does. Let's not live in this. Like, it's an escape for so many of us, or we have a really hard job, or we're in a really difficult situation in life. So social media feels like an escape from all of that. It's an easy way, and it's something we can do to control a bad situation. Like, I can keep doing this. It feels good. It gets me out of it. And if you don't like it, all you have to do is just click off of it and it's done. Like, we could come up with all these different reasons, and we realize like social media is a mess. So what's the solution to this? Like, as a Christian, what I have to find is that if anything controls me like that, it has to be a form of slavery. It actually is a form of idolatry and not seeking the Lord first. And in that sense, it's a sin. Like, being addicted to social media is nothing short of a sin. Why? Love the Lord your God with all of your heart, soul, strength, and mind. What about your priorities? What about glorifying and enjoying God and seeing the beauty of God and relishing God and glorifying God in all the things that we do? And it's like, you can't tell me that being addicted to social media like that is God honoring. Like, it's just not. Addictions to anything are not God honoring. And it's like, we can't say that we're free because a slave is never free. And if we are enslaved to these kinds of things and these things are drawing us away from God, and in that sense, they're a sin, they're the breaking of the commandments of God in that regard, like, we're not free. We're totally, utterly given over to a form of slavery. And the interesting thing is that it's so easy to put away. Now, it's really funny because, like, growing up, one issue that I really struggled with was, like, again, I'm being very revealing. I'm not trying to be mean to my mom. Like, I love my mom and I realize addictions are real, but like, I just used to be like, why doesn't she just stop? Like, just stop. Like, put it down, walk away, find something else to do. Like, don't spend all your money on beer and cigarettes and like all these different things. And like, we spent so much of my childhood, eventually my adult life, talking about it. And like, I have no qualms in saying, like, my mom, like, she drank herself to death. Like, oh, she died from a heart attack. Well, what caused the heart attack? Like, we can beat around the bush, but that's what it was. And like, all these different things. And I remember somebody growing up, like, he was a pastor in the local area, and he was like, Bill, he's like, addictions are real. Like, they really grab people, and like, it takes a long time to overcome them. So it's like, yes, trust God, move on, repent, seek the Lord. And that sounds really good. And it is the ultimate base issue. Like, I can't deny that. Like, no amount of pop psychology is going to convince me that it's always all these secondary things. Like, the primary issue is like just a misordering and misplacing of the goods that God has given us. Like, love God, love others, and all the other ways that we can put it, like the two greatest commandments in that sense. But addictions are real. And sometimes, like, it requires necessary steps in order to overcome them. So it's like repent, trust God. And what we're going to do in just a second is like give you some basic ways that I've seen here. In addition to it is that you have to see that there's this concept of what does it mean to live the virtuous life, like Nicomachean ethics by Aristotle, or what Plato was trying to teach us in the Republic and many of the other dialogues, where it's this idea of like, what does it mean to be truly human? Like, what does it mean to have true virtue versus a vice? Like a virtue is something you got to work and strive for, like being courageous or showing compassion in certain areas, or different kinds of virtues. And we could talk about this at some point in time, like all the different virtues that people have, having, as we said, like to be a courageous person, whereas vice is to not be courageous. And we can get all the different ones that are related to it. But what we find is that you can be too courageous to the point where you're just like running into every fight. And that's not a good thing. Like you're going to die that way. Like clearly, like if you think that you can literally beat up any Tom, Dick, and Harry in the world, you're going to come up against one that's going to absolutely, utterly smash you. And I guarantee that he does jujitsu. Or what if you lack courage? Like there's something you know that you need to do and you won't do it. So what Aristotle called us to is like this world of a mean, not being mean, but like the middle of it is it's not too much courage. It's not too little courage. It's the right amount of courage. And I think in one sense, we got to see that's something that can help us understand social media. Like if it's your job, you have to be on there. Sorry, it's just the way that it is. But it's not having, as we're looking at these, it's not just going to the issue of too much social media, which I think is where we're suffering from an excess. And I don't think there's something wrong with no social media, but what I'm trying to get at is this, is that in your life, you got to find a balance to this. How much is the appropriate? Like you got to be honest with yourself. If you're not honest, it's just throw it out. Like the virtuous life is asking questions related to what's the excess, what, like if you work for a social media company and you're not on there, like having a defect in that regard is going to get you fired. But I want us to see that it's this concept of a means. Now, some people will, chide Aristotle and be like, well, what's the means on adultery or something like that. Even in Nicomachean ethics, he talks about like there are things that are absolutely morally wrong and there's no means on them. So don't give me any of that garbage. But what I want us to see here is that you need to replace social media with things that are better. It's like, we know what we need to take off, but what do we need to put on? So I want to look at something here real quick, going back to our evaluation screen here on like ways to get over it. I'm just going to make sure that you can see that. And we'll make it just a hair bigger for everybody. There you go. That's a hair, by the way. It's official. That's how much it is. It goes on to say things like very practical things. Like, what are things that we should take off? Well, turn off your notifications. It says it can be so difficult to detach yourself from social media when your phone lights up every minute with new notifications. Oh, this airline will give you a discount, or somebody liked your Twitter post, or somebody liked it on Facebook, or this new video hit, or whatever it may be. It says notifications for certain individuals have tweeted and so on are distracting enough. So like if you have somebody you really follow, but so many people also get caught up watching their phone and counting likes. This is unhealthy, will only cause anxiety if you do this after making a post. After posting what you'd like to, I recommend leaving social media for a period of time so you do not get trapped or wrapped up by who is interacting with your post. So simply turn off your notifications. And that can be like, who's texting you? Like iPhone, beautiful thing about it is it will like let you set different categories for like who can message you throughout the day, or phone calls and different things. Like figure out how to set it so you're not constantly being bombarded from you. So if crazy Larry gets off on some issue and he wants to send you 35 text messages about some issue that's caused him, well, don't let crazy Larry into your notifications. It's as simple as that. Another one is don't have your phone by you whilst, don't you like that word, you sleep. It's not difficult to see how our phones wreak havoc with our sleep schedules. 45% of people choose to scroll through social media instead of sleep. Like people are literally losing sleep. To combat this, place your phone on the other side of the room. If your phone is out of reach, we will be less tempted to check it. I've actually had to put my phone like downstairs. In fact, I like set an alarm on my phone to make me get up off, like out of bed off my rear, go down there and look at it. because one, we don't like to get out of bed, and two, it's away from us. And if you have like a noise setting, or you have it set in such a way that like, oh, what am I going to do if mom needs to call me? Have it set up so that that phone call will go through and you will hear it. Another one is remove your phone from your morning routine. How many people wake up, grab their phone, lay in bed for an hour looking at YouTube Shorts videos or Facebook or the latest drama, this, that, and the other? Just like, don't do it. Find something else as a replacement. Place less weight on your personal social media appearance. Like, your social media personality is not you. It's not. Like, there's more to you. Like, oh, look at all the influence I have. Well, maybe superficial influence. Maybe you can like cause stuff that can be problems, or maybe you can actually do good things, but you are much more than what your social media post may be. Seriously. And if you think your social media post is like the most important thing about you, repent before God. You've got more important things about you. Like, God created you for more. It's not just like take that off. It's realize like there's something more. God has something greater. Like, what is better than, flower smelling spray? The smell of a real flower. Like, what's better? This is like local strawberry analogy. What's better than strawberry flavored, stuff that you put into your drink? Like a real strawberry. The point is like, there's something more to life than these digital half-made alternatives. God gives us much more. Opt for analog alternatives. Fall back in love with your hobbies or discover new ones. Sit down or set yourself time away from your work and your phone to explore and enjoy non-screen activities such as arts, crafts, reading, or exercise. And I would say jujitsu or martial arts or whatever you like. That's what I do. I love, you can't check Facebook and defend a cross collar choke. Like, maybe you can, you get my point. Ha ha ha. But the point is that you shouldn't be able to like totally set it aside and have a digital detox. Like, we send people away for real addictions. Why not do this with social media? It means like literally just like get away from it. Don't have anything to do with it. Delete all the apps. If you have to, like, get rid of them. In one sense, it's like if your right hand causes you sin, cut it off. If your right eye causes you sin, gouge it out. And it's not saying literally cut your hand or literally gouge your eye. It's like take extreme measures to overcome sins in your life. And why can't we do that with social media issues also? So it gives a lot of different advice, things that I believe are beneficial. So here's kind of how I want to wrap this up here is I want us to see is that replace it with other things. Like, replace scrolling in the morning with Bible reading. Replace texting with somebody endlessly with going and getting a cup of coffee with them. And maybe don't even bring your phone with you. Replace hanging out on social media. And it's funny, all the different buzzes. And like, I intentionally left my phone on so that you could see, like, it even affects things like this, emails. Shut them off. Shut them off. Get rid of them. Stay away from them. Replace, the laziness that may come from endless hours of watching YouTube and this, that, and the other with good conversation. People might be saying, we can think of all of this. The point is, find something that's real and better. Don't fall prey to it. This is something I've fallen for. I struggle with. I'm working to overcome. Like, I've literally told some friends, like, don't send me a message this way and the other. If you need me, call me. I might not be able to answer. Like, I'm not on social media right now. Why? I'm trying to detox from it. It's something I struggle with. And here's what I think is this. And we'll conclude with this. Recognize the slavery of addiction. Addiction is slavery. You are not in control of something about yourself. And recognize the freedom of overcoming the addiction. Like, we always celebrate when somebody overcomes alcoholism. Like, hey, 365 days since I've had a beer or whatever. And that's a great thing. Like, I'm not trying to downplay what that person has gone through. But why can't we celebrate the freedom we have from overcoming social media addiction? Seriously, why not? I think it's something that we should encourage people to do. Like, if you are a pastor or somebody of influence in that regard, like, encourage your people to get off their phones. And here's what I want you to see is like, the better things are truly that, namely, they're better things. Like, there are better things than the phone. There are better things than the movie. There are better things than some cheap substitute. Namely, it's God and it's the creation God has given us. And like, do we need these? Are there good things from social media? Am I being a legalist about it? No, but I want to have a true, meaningful, healthy conversation about that which is affecting so many people inside of the church, outside of the church, inside the academy, outside of the academy, in the workforce, outside of the workforce, and so much more. So again, if this was something you found beneficial, or you think that this is something that somebody else would find beneficial, please send it to them. Like, this is not some rogue, like, give me likes, give me views, but we want to help people out in this regard. Like, I don't want to just talk about abstract lives. Like, this is a philosophical and theological issue. It is. How do we live the good life before God, in his scriptures, and in society in this regard? How do we live the good life in our own lives? And social media is something that is such a part of our lives that it requires this conversation. So again, thank you. I appreciate it. I hope this was beneficial. If it was, please like and comment below.